Hey guys, Bill, Comic Book University, and the Ultimates 2, Volume number 8. This is Sickness Incarnate. This comic book, guys, let me just tell you something. We start off with Galactus talking about himself, basically. He's sitting there discussing who he is, how he became who he was, how he was actually, from 2 universes ago. He's technically the oldest being in existence minus the first firmament. Just boom. Absolutely incredible how they keep the continuity going. And this just reaffirms all of that. He talks about how he eventually became who he became to a very small degree. If you don't know the story is fairly easy to find. I'll do a Galactus Explained one of these days, explained in a minute. But in the meantime, although he is at a weakened state, as the Lifebringer, he appears on the surface face of Ego, the living planet. Recently seen in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, the Volume 2. Guys, Galactus, the Lifebringer, who used to be Galactus the Devourer, was obviously the innate natural enemy of Ego, the living planet. It's just predator-prey, but prey with teeth and giant tentacles and mind blast. But the idea, guys, is that we have Ego, the living planet, who says, I will never forgive you. I don't care if you change the color of your armor to gold or not. I will never forgive you. Well, unfortunately for Ego, Galactus is a lot more powerful than him. Even in a weakened state, he's still a lot more powerful than him. Fortunately for Ego, he genuinely does not mean any harm. And he goes up to, he burrows, politely, makes a tunnel, and gets rid of the antibodies and everything, gets directly to Ego, who, mind you, is not that brilliant. He's not that brilliant. This is not like the movie Ego. Ego is like, I'm going to get you, rah, 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 and attacks him. It doesn't work. And when he realizes that he's going to get to his brain, like literally his core, his brain, he's like, perhaps we could talk about this. Galactus says, yes, talk. And he touches Ego's brain. And then he releases his overpower, which this is amazing. The concept of an overpower, the power that guards us, like I guess his prescience, he lets his guard down basically. So he could be killed by Ego at this particular moment. And he says, this is who I am. And he explains, this is who I was. A brief description of the character of Galen of Ta. This is Galactus. And eventually we get to see the original form, the original scientist form of Ego, who comes forward and says, this is who I am. And this is interesting because, look, Jack Kirby is the guy who created both of these characters. But the multiple retcons and the final decision of how Galactus his history is going to be rested with other people instead of Jack Kirby. He made the initial Galactus. He had the big G on his chest and, stuff like that. Like he gets the credit for creating Galactus. But the character that eventually developed from those initial drawings and the initial story and all that stuff have greatly evolved since then. But for the most part, aside from the stranger coming along and changing the story, the history of Ego, for the most part, Ego's story is the same that Jack Kirby originally made for him, and that's expressed in this comic. While, both storylines are just combined. And guys, if you want to know more about Ego, the Living Planet, please, in YouTube, go up top, and I'll link it below in the description. Ego, explained in a minute. All right, I did a brief character description of who and what Ego the Living Planet is and the different versions of him, so to speak. And they also had the moon. They also had Super Ego there, which is absolutely beautiful. They actually had the moon there. I love that they did that. This is technically his brother. So they talk and they do the ultimate, in my opinion, the ultimate expression. They, instead of talking about their differences, they talk about what they have in common. And I loved this. That, and we also get to see that the maker, the Reed Richards of the Ultimate Universe, Earth 1610, is going in front of the High Evolutionary, which is beautiful to me because, guys, I have expressed so many times that the Maker is basically, even though there is a version of the High Evolutionary in the Ultimates universe, that Reed Richards, the Maker, is more of the the high evolutionary than the high evolutionary was in the Ultimates universe. So these two characters meeting each other and the plans that they got, I can't wait to see the next episode, the next issue. Guys, this comic gets an A+. This comic gets an A+ because genuinely, this comic, like, it spoke to my heart in some ways, that they actually, you know, like you guys know, I'm a huge comic book nerd, all right? I really get emotionally invested into the comics and these stories. These are things, and this is a very moving comic, genuinely. And what this comic essentially did was it explained that these characters are still the same. Their history, they're comparing notes and saying who they actually are, which is necessary. And seeing that these characters are going to join up as a form of an Eternity Watch to go and try and help Eternity, who is captured in chains by the First Firmament. This is a beautiful story. And honestly, Al Ewing, Oddkoch, if I'm mispronouncing your names, I apologize, but genuinely, what you guys have done in this comic, I can only say, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, class dismissed.